My name is Elizabeth, and this is my journey. We were an average family. My mom, dad, and I lived together in our snug, welcoming home. My father was a hard worker, always ensuring we had enough even though we weren't wealthy. I was 13 years old when our lives took a tragic turn. It was a typical day. My dad left for work in the morning, gave mom a kiss, tousled my hair, and said, "See you tonight, kiddo." Those were the last words I heard him say. Later that day, 2 police officers came to our door to break the devastating news of an accident at his workplace. My dad was gone. The months following my father's death were incredibly tough. My mom struggled a lot, spending days in bed, and I found myself taking on responsibilities far beyond what a 13-year-old should handle. Our neighbors did their best to support us, bringing meals and offering their sympathies, but the loss of my dad left a deep, unfillable gap in our lives. About a year later, my mom met Jack at a grief counseling group. He was a divorced father with a teenage son, Matthew. Initially, Jack was quite charming. He would join us for dinner, bring me treats, and chat about school. Seeing my mom start to smile again helped me warm up to the new arrangement more quickly than I perhaps should have. One evening, my mom took my hands in hers and said, "Elizabeth, honey, how would you feel if Jack and Matthew moved in with us?" I was taken aback, unsure what to make of it all. It felt rushed, but seeing the hope in her eyes, I reluctantly agreed. They married in a simple courthouse ceremony, and just like that, our home grew by 2. The early days with Jack and Matthew in the house were manageable. Jack made an effort to be kind, and Matthew mostly kept to himself. However, as time passed, subtle changes began to surface. Whenever I needed my mom's attention for school events, Jack would subtly imply that I was asking for too much. When I needed new clothes, he would grumble about the costs. It was then that the frequent trips to my grandmother's house began. Initially, it was just the odd sleepover or weekend stay, which gradually extended to weeks at a time. I started keeping extra clothes at my grandmother's to avoid the constant packing. The turning point came when my mom announced she was pregnant when I was 14. The joy on her face contrasted sharply with the sinking feeling in my stomach. Jack, standing proudly behind her, seemed to have everything he wanted. It dawned on me then that they were crafting their ideal family, and I was becoming an inconvenience. One night, I overheard a conversation between Jack and my mom from my hidden spot at the top of the stairs. Jack's voice was clear. "Look, Gianna, we need to be realistic. The house is getting too cramped, especially with the baby on the way. Elizabeth is already practically living at your mother's. Maybe it's time to make that a permanent solution." My heart raced with shock and hurt, even though I had sensed this was coming. The pain deepened when my mom, without protest, agreed that it might be best for me to stay with my grandmother more permanently. That moment crystallized my new reality. I was slowly being edged out of my own family, pushed aside to make room for their new lives. As I faced these changes, I learned to adapt and find strength in my grandmother's unwavering support, realizing that sometimes family isn't just about where you live, but where you are loved and valued. The day I found out my mom agreed to let me live permanently with Grandma, I ran to my room, heartbroken, and cried into my pillow. The next morning, I shared everything with Grandma. Contrary to my expectations of sadness or anger, Grandma's face set in determination. Holding my hands firmly, she told me, "Elizabeth, if they're set on this, then we'll set it right. You're not just some unwanted package to be shuffled around at their convenience." That very day, Grandma called my mom. Her voice was strong and steady as I overheard her from the kitchen. "Gianna, if you want Elizabeth to stay with me, then we need to make this formal. I want to adopt her. Elizabeth deserves stability, not to feel like an orphan who still has a mother. I will raise her, ensure she gets a good education, and look after her interests. But you need to agree to terminate your parental rights." The weight of her words hung in the air. I waited, holding my breath, wondering if Mom would object if she chose me over her new life with Jack. But she didn't. The legal proceedings were swift. Mom signed the papers almost indifferently, as if signing off on a routine transaction. Soon after, Grandma became my legal guardian, and I moved in with her permanently. Strangely, it didn't feel like much had changed. Grandma had already been more of a mother to me than my mom in recent years. Visits back to Mom's house grew sparse and were always uncomfortable. I tried to maintain some connection out of obligation, but each visit was stifling. Jack would barely acknowledge me. Matthew stayed out of sight, and the baby seemed unsettled by my presence. Mom was always tense, frequently glancing at the clock. During one of my last visits, I tried to share photos from my school play. Mom barely looked at them before being distracted by the baby. "That's nice, honey," she muttered, not really seeing them. "But shouldn't you be heading back? It's getting late, and Jack's parents are coming over for dinner." I left that day and decided it was my last visit. What was the point? Mom seemed hardly to notice my absence. The sporadic phone calls ceased entirely, and even my birthdays passed without a message from her. As years went by, Mom's absence solidified into my new normal. Occasionally, I would wonder about her, pondering if she ever thought of me or regretted her decisions, but those thoughts faded over time. My high school graduation day was bright and sunny. Sitting among my classmates, I scanned the crowd. Knowing well that Mom and Jack wouldn't be there, I hadn't invited them. Yet, a part of me still hoped for a surprise. They didn't show, but Grandma was there, her pride evident, camera in hand, capturing every moment as I received my diploma. When it came time for college, Grandma was ready to support me. "Don't worry about the money," she insisted when I mentioned student loans. "I've been saving for your education since you were born." The college offered a new beginning, a place where no one knew of my tangled family history. I immersed myself in studies, made new friends, and slowly built a life that left little room to dwell on the past. Years flew by, and as they did, I crafted a world where I was defined not by the absence of my mother, but by my achievements and the unwavering support of my grandmother. Walking across the stage with my college diploma in hand was a moment of pure joy, and once again, Grandma was there, her cheers drowning out everyone else. After graduation, moving back to Grandma's house felt natural. It was the place I truly considered home, a place filled with the warmth and acceptance that I never felt in my mom's reformed family. One evening, as we sat sipping tea, Grandma gently broke some news to me. "I should probably tell you," she started, her voice cautious as she stirred her tea. "Jack got a job offer in Wyoming last year. Your mother sold the house, and they've moved with the family." My teacup paused midair, shock freezing me for a moment. They had moved across the country, and not even a whisper of it had reached me. The sting of this revelation hurt more than I anticipated. I managed to smile. "It's fine. I mean, she hasn't been part of my life for years, right?" But later that night, the pain crept in as I found myself on Facebook, scrolling through my mom's profile. Her privacy settings allowed me glimpses into her world. There was my half-brother, no longer just a toddler but a growing boy, and Matthew, now almost an adult. My mom looked older but genuinely happy, always surrounded by what seemed like her real family. Hours slipped by on some nights as I viewed photos of family vacations, birthday parties, and casual backyard barbecues, the kind of normal family activities we used to have before Dad passed away. The change started with a persistent cough Grandma tried to dismiss as just a cold. But then a fever set in, and a weakness that made her struggle to even get out of bed. Alarm bells rang for me when she couldn't muster the strength to bake her usual Sunday cookies. One morning, when she collapsed in the bathroom, I didn't hesitate to call an ambulance. The following weeks blurred into a nightmare of hospital corridors, the constant beeping of machines, and the somber faces of doctors. I was by her side every moment I could manage, watching her struggle to breathe, trying to convince myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed. One particularly tough night, as I sat in the uncomfortable hospital chair, I made a tough decision. It was time to reach out to my mom. Whatever our past, this was still her mother in the hospital. I typed out a message on Facebook Messenger. "Mom, I need to tell you something important. Grandma is very sick. She's been in the hospital for 3 weeks now. The doctors are worried. I think you should come see her as soon as you can." I hit send, holding my breath for a response. The reply came quicker than I expected, but it was like a punch to the gut. "Elizabeth, I don't have time for this right now. We're in the middle of renovating the house, and Samuel has a school play coming up. Besides, legally speaking, she's your mother now, isn't she? You're the one who should be taking care of her." I read the message over and over, unable to digest the coldness of her words. But there was more. "Just so we're clear, I won't be contributing a single penny to that old woman's medical bills. I have my own family to take care of." That term, that old woman, referring to her mother, ignited a fury within me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I contemplated how to respond, anger and disbelief wrestling within me. My heart ached, not just for the lack of compassion toward Grandma, but for the sheer dismissal of our shared history and the unspoken love that should have transcended legal documents and life changes. What could I possibly say to someone who referred to their dying mother as that old woman? I closed the messaging app, feeling a mix of disbelief and heartache. The following 4 months turned into the most challenging period of my life. After being discharged from the hospital, Grandma came home, but she was a changed person. Practically overnight, I transformed into a caretaker, managing medications, changing linens, and preparing soft meals that were easier for her to digest. On the good days, Grandma would gather the strength to sit up and recount tales from my mom's childhood, her voice tinged with nostalgia. On the bad days, she was too weak to even open her eyes. I took leave from my job to look after her full-time, immersing myself in a relentless routine of medical care, doctor visits, and sleepless nights filled with worry. Throughout this ordeal, my mom remained distant. No calls, no messages, no sign that she cared about her mother's worsening condition. Then came the heartbreaking morning I'll never forget. I went to wake Grandma for her morning medication, but she was unresponsive, her skin cold. Tears streaming down my face, I realized she had passed away. Even in my grief, I knew I had to inform my mom. I picked up my phone and typed through blurry eyes, "Mom, Grandma passed away this morning. The funeral will be in the coming days. Please come. Whatever has happened between us, she was your mother. This is your last chance to say goodbye." I checked my phone obsessively, each alert sending a jolt through me, but there was nothing from Mom. Days passed, and I was deep into funeral planning when her response finally arrived. It was heartless. "Elizabeth, honestly, you need to stop with all these messages. They're becoming annoying. I don't know how to make this any clearer. I don't care what's happening with you or Mom anymore. That chapter of my life is closed." My hands trembled as I read on, her indifference stark. "And if this is about funeral expenses, don't even think about asking. I won't give you a single dollar. Matthew is getting married soon, and we have our expenses. I'm not going to let a funeral overshadow my stepson's wedding." Tears of anger blurred my vision as I read her final, callous remark. "But don't worry, I'll definitely come when it's time to divide the inheritance. Make sure you keep me informed about that." The phone slipped from my grasp, landing softly on the carpet. I slumped back into Grandma's favorite armchair, my body shaking with a mixture of rage and sorrow. This woman, this stranger who was once my mother, cared more about a wedding dress and an inheritance than the passing of her mother. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, but when I finally rose, a resolve had crystallized within me. If this was how she wanted it, then I would handle everything alone. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparations. I met with the funeral director and chose a simple but elegant casket, knowing it was what Grandma would have wanted. I arranged for white lilies to adorn the service, her favorite. I reached out to her friends from the church, her bridge club, and even some former colleagues from her teaching days. I wrote the obituary myself, each word a painful yet honest tribute to her life. Beloved mother and grandmother. I began, and every word felt like a testament to the profound impact she had on my life, far more than my biological mother ever did. A week after the funeral, I mustered the strength to sift through Grandma's documents. Her desk was a testament to her meticulous nature, with every paper neatly filed and labeled in folders that had been organized for decades. There were birth certificates, tax returns, and insurance policies, all systematically arranged. Then, my eyes caught an envelope marked "Last Will and Testament Copy." My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a document typed with precision and signed by Grandma. As I read through it, I had to sit down and then read it again and again. The will started formally. I, Rachel Smith, being of sound mind and body, declare this to be my last will and testament. The contents were straightforward, reflecting Grandma's direct nature. She had left her house and all her savings, totaling $300,000, to me, her legally adopted daughter. However, what followed took my breath away. To my biological mother, Gianna Edwards, she left $22,000 and her family Bible with a poignant hope. It is my sincere hope that she will read it and finally learn the true meaning of patience, compassion, and love for one's neighbor. I sat in silence, letting the magnitude of her words sink in. On impulse, I snapped a clear photo of the will and sent it to Mom. No message, no commentary, just the image. The response was instantaneous. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages I didn't bother to read, followed by a barrage of calls. Mom's name flashed on my screen repeatedly, but I let each call go to voicemail, finding a strange satisfaction in the act. The next morning, as I was making coffee, I heard car doors slam outside. Peering through the window, I saw Mom and Jack rushing up the walkway. I took a slow sip of my coffee, then waited for the inevitable pounding on the door. "Open this door right now, Elizabeth." Mom's voice was shrill, almost hysterical. I walked deliberately to the door and opened it slowly. "This is ridiculous," Mom burst in, waving her phone with the photo of the will. "This has to be fake. There's no way Mom would do this to me. I'm her real daughter." I leaned against the door frame, observing her flushed face. "I'm surprised you rushed out here. Don't you have more important things to do? A stepson's wedding to plan, then venues to book, that mother of the groom dress to alter?" Mom's face turned from red to purple. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Mocking us like this." "This is obviously a fake," Jack interjected, trying to sound authoritative. "We need to see the official will from a notary, not some random paper you could have typed up yourself." I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "How convenient that you should mention that. The official reading of the will is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. at the notary's office." "Fine," Mom snapped. "We'll stay here tonight." "No, you won't," I replied firmly, stepping aside and gesturing toward the door. "This is my house now, and you're not welcome to stay here. There's a Holiday Inn about 2 miles down the road. I hear they have very reasonable rates." "You can't throw us out." Mom looked genuinely shocked. "No, Mom, it's not. And you're right, I can't throw you out of your mother's house, but I can throw you out of my house, which is exactly what I'm doing right now." I closed the door on their stunned faces, leaned back against it, and took a deep breath, my heart pounding with a mix of resolve and sorrow. Despite feeling surprisingly clear-headed about what tomorrow might bring, I anticipated an eventful day. The small, yet distinctly professional office of the notary was clad in dark wood paneling, its walls adorned with various certificates. Mr. Charles, the notary, sat poised behind his desk, emanating the demeanor of a man well-versed in witnessing all manners of family disputes. My mother and her husband, Jack, arrived 10 minutes late, their appearances betraying a restless night in their hotel room. Once everyone had settled, Mr. Charles, adjusting his glasses, initiated the official proceedings for the reading of Rachel Smith's last will and testament. I remained silent, observing my mother nervously shifting in her seat as Mr. Charles navigated through the dense, legal jargon. The moment he broached the subject of the inheritance distribution, my mother's expression morphed from anxious to incensed. "This is ludicrous," she burst out before Mr. Charles could conclude. "This has to be a forgery. She's manipulated everything." "Mrs. Edwards," Mr. Charles responded with a calming presence, "I assure you the will is authentic. I oversaw its drafting and was present at its signing." "You're in on this too," my mother accused, rising from her seat, her voice escalating. "You're all conspiring against me. She has turned everyone against me, just like she did with my mother." "Mrs. Edwards," Mr. Charles's tone grew stern. "Please lower your voice and take your seat, or I will be compelled to involve the authorities." Reluctantly, she sat down, breathing heavily. The room fell into a brief silence, broken only by her whispered threat to me. "Sue, I will contest this with everything I have. That house belongs to me. Those savings belong to me. I am her true, blood-related daughter." Mr. Charles sighed, removed his glasses, and meticulously cleaned them before replying. "While you're certainly entitled to challenge the will in court, I must inform you that it would be a fruitless endeavor." "What are you implying?" Jack interjected. "The will is ironclad," Mr. Charles explained, rifling through some documents. "Your mother had it properly drafted, witnessed, and notarized. She was in full possession of her mental faculties when she made these decisions. Moreover, we have substantial evidence that Elizabeth has been the primary caregiver and closest family member for years." "That doesn't matter," my mother snapped back. "Blood is what matters." "Actually, Mrs. Edwards," Mr. Charles corrected, "in legal terms, that's incorrect. What matters are your mother's explicit and documented wishes. She chose to leave her estate to Elizabeth, who was not only legally adopted but also showed unwavering care and devotion throughout her final years." I felt compelled to speak up. "I also have all our Facebook messages, Mom. The ones where you refused to visit Grandma in the hospital, where you called her that old woman and declined to assist with her medical bills. The ones where you were too busy shopping for a wedding outfit to attend her funeral. Would you like me to share those?" My mother's face alternated between pale and red. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I said softly. I had preserved every message, every rejection. Every instance, she prioritized her new family over her mother, confirming Grandma's reasons for her decisions. Months passed without the threatened lawsuit materializing. Each time I checked my mail, I half expected to find legal documents, but they never came. Eventually, her continued silence spoke volumes about her financial predicament more than anything else could. Elizabeth often thought about her mother's actions more than she would openly admit. However, her mother's silence on social media ended abruptly one morning. Elizabeth awoke to a barrage of notifications. Her mother had shared a lengthy, emotional post online, claiming her daughter had stolen her inheritance and betrayed her. With tearful emojis, she depicted herself as a victim, hinting at karmic retribution and divine justice. What her mother hadn't anticipated was the wave of backlash from their family. "Have you forgotten how you abandoned your daughter?" Elizabeth's aunt, her father's sister, commented sharply. Others joined in. Her cousin Jack pointed out, "You chose your new family over Elizabeth, even legally renouncing your maternal rights. You're not the victim here." Family members, primarily from her father's side and a few from her mother's, began reminding her of the years of neglect. They recalled how Elizabeth had been excluded from family events, how her mother had evaded questions about her whereabouts with vague excuses, and missed every significant milestone in her life. The post was eventually deleted, but the familial verdict was clear, and they did not support her mother. However, her mother was persistent. Phone calls began to arrive again, this time pleading for help with tuition for Elizabeth's half-brother, Samuel, as he looked at colleges. "Elizabeth, honey," her mother would begin in a cloyingly sweet voice, "Samuel needs your help with his tuition. He's your brother after all." Elizabeth ignored the requests, deleting messages and resisting the urge to respond. Her mother tried again, asking for a small loan for Samuel's education, claiming familial bonds. Eventually, Elizabeth answered a call, cutting off her mother's plea. "Family," she interjected. "You ceased being my family when I was 15. You didn't care about my education when Grandma was financing it. Don't call me again." With that, Elizabeth hung up and blocked her number, feeling as though she had ended a long, tumultuous chapter of her life. Now, 8 months later, Elizabeth sat in her own home, enjoying the sunset through the windows of a house that required just modest renovations, plans her grandmother had already set in motion. Most of the $300,000 inheritance remained in a high-yield savings account. Employed in a good job and free from rent, Elizabeth was financially stable. Although occasionally tempted by luxury vacations or online shopping sprees, she remembered her grandmother's wise words, Money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy security. Determined to live prudently and create a stable life that would have made her grandmother proud, Elizabeth embraced the security she now enjoyed. Legally and emotionally, she no longer considered the woman who gave birth to her as her mother. However, she cherished the 15 years she had with her father and the unwavering love of a grandmother who stepped in as her mother when she most needed it. Not everyone is fortunate to have even that much, she reflected as she planned her sensible, secure future.